Okay, so we are live. Good afternoon to our usual listeners. We know that we have a few other persons to join us today. We are late. My sincere apology. Work commitments took me away. When duty calls, they say we must obey. And so I'm sorry to keep you waiting. I had my service station personnel saying to me, I didn't see you on this afternoon. So I said, I'm a little late, but guaranteed in 5 minutes we'll be up and running. And so we're here in this little neck of the woods. Mr. Meade been doing our thing for a few weeks. I'm monitoring, keeping the people informed, especially those people who are on social media with Mr. Lenard Josiah. And today we're happy to have you as a part of our team. Shortly we should be joined by Mr. Michael for sure. I'm trying to reach Pastor White. She had the 5:15 time. Maybe she had something else tied up, but I'm still trying to reach her. So we're gonna have our forecast by Mr. Lenard Josiah. Good to see you, man. And looking all bright. The weather, maybe like the cheese. When that's
Oh man, good afternoon to you. Yeah, man, good afternoon to you. Good afternoon to everyone. And let me take this minute just to acknowledge my former director, Mr. Meade. So happy to have you here. It's really a privilege to sit and talk and to chit chat with you one more time about weather. Even though you're on retirement, man, we're still doing it. We're still doing it. It's nice
I haven't given it up, totally, I'm still keeping an eye on, on things. Yes.
That's good, man. That's wonderful. Nice to have you. And I'm sure that we can bounce some things off as we talk meteorology today. So as we keep our eyes on the weather, today was mostly cloudy. Those of you who were on the outside today would have witnessed a lot of clouds. We had what we call periodic passing showers because of the presence of a tropical wave in the vicinity. The tropical wave, or the axis of the tropical wave, has since moved on towards the west. And as it moves on towards the west, we are likely to see that the clouds will diminish overnight and we will have diminishing chance of showers. So until that area of disturbed weather comes on stream or comes into our neck of the woods, we are going to be forecasting diminishing clouds and diminishing chances of showers going on into tonight and into tomorrow. We will see a little bit of haze tomorrow because that's just the norm, and with the passage of tropical waves. And that's basically it. But we're thankful for the showers today. Definitely, we are thankful for the showers. And Betty?
So what's happening with the tropical disturbance that's out there? The tropical disturbance, has it turned into a tropical storm as yet? What's happening? Are we going to get a hurricane, and what part will it be taking? Now you're going to take us to your screen this afternoon and show us all what's happening out there. People get scared. People get stressed. Some people get depressed during this time of the season. We all look for the excitement, but as it gets closer, we get so concerned about what's happening.
Yes. I know. I did have a number of calls today, and let me allay the fears right now. No, we don't have a tropical storm out. I think many individuals were questioning about the tropical storm alert. It's what we had placed out today just to alert people of the chances of the tropical disturbance AL92 becoming a tropical cyclone. But as of now, 5 o'clock this afternoon, the area of disturbed weather remains an area of disturbed weather. However, in the next couple of hours, between now and 48 hours, or even now and 60 hours out from now, the forecast is for it to enter into an area that's favorable, and the chances are going greater for it to become a tropical cyclone. I do not, at this stage, the environmental conditions do not necessarily support carrying it as high as a hurricane. Most of the computer models have backed off of that scenario, but notwithstanding, it's going to be coming into an area that we see warmer oceanic heat content, warmer atmospheric conditions, and we are looking at less shear. And with those, we should see some cloud growth going on into it. So in the next couple of, let's say, the next 48 hours, we will likely to see the area of disturbed weather becoming a little bit more enhanced. Now, this is your shared screen. Those individuals who are wondering where is this tropical area of disturbed weather? This is Antigua and Barbuda right here. And we are looking at this large gyre of clouds right here. It's a very large system. And this large system is not necessarily wrapping itself up together. There are a few things that has happened during the past 24 hours, and with respect to what we call dry air intrusion into the system center is in this general location right here. And you can see it's void of significant clouds. You're seeing all these clouds on the periphery right here, but hardly anything in the system. It does have a nice circular spin to it. And once it gets... And once we get what we call more clouds and the convection associated with it, then we will see itself wrapping up together. But for right now, the area is void of significant clouds. And because of that, we are not seeing too much of development. But this afternoon, we are seeing some patches of clouds begin to form right in this general location, some patches of clouds here. And it's very likely in the next 24 hours, my brother, that we can see some enhancement from this particular feature. Your mic? Your mic?
Here we are looking at the system this afternoon. And you're saying that it's going to get into favorable area this afternoon and things could change. What is the probability of it changing? And what kind of area? You're saying it's a large system. Is it going to cover several islands or what? I'm looking at it. I'm looking at it there.
Right, very good question. Now, as I said to you, Antigua is right here. Antigua, let me get back to the area that I can annotate right now. Antigua and Barbuda, they are right in this general location. Well, the computer models, one of the more notable or notoriety computer model, the ECMWF, tracks it towards the west in this general location, while the GFS tracks it in this general location here. So the mean path is someplace between the northern tip of Martinique and just to the north of Barbuda. We are looking at this particular area to get into someplace in this general location in the next 48 to 60 hours. And as it moves into the Eastern Caribbean, the likelihood of it wrapping itself up together has about an 80 to 90% chance that we will see a tropical cyclone forming out of this area. The more likely scenario as we speak right now is for it to become a tropical depression, even a minimal tropical storm. And if the atmospheric conditions lend itself a little bit more, maybe a strong tropical storm. Why do I say this? Here's the reason why. The speed is telling it all. It's moving at a very fast rate at just about 20 miles per hour. If it does continue into this general speed, then it's likely that it will be slow to occur. Development will be slow to occur because of the general momentum. But if it slows itself down, it's more likely to feed off the warm tropical waters, light wind shear, and we can have what we call a rapid intensification, as which one of the what we call the ship's model is suggesting that it can undergo. But for right now, I really prefer to lend more credence to the global models who have been performing pretty admirably well with respect to the past storm Gonzalo. And for right now, it's suggesting that it will be in the vicinity within the next 48 to 60 hours. So it's really something that we should really take heed to and be prepared and to monitor very closely.
What are we saying to our people, both Mr. Josiah and Mr. Meade? How do we get them prepared and not get them scared about what's happening? What should we be saying to people?
Well, as Mr. Josiah said just now, the important thing at this point, okay, is to monitor closely. All right, that's the thing. Make sure that you follow all of the bulletins from the Met Office and elsewhere. You know, the whole idea is to get as much information as you can about the system. That's one. Secondly, to have your hurricane plan. Every house should have one. You should know, and every business should have one. Every office should have one. And it's not a very complicated thing. You just know when you're going to move, how you're going to store things, how you're going to cover things up, who's going to do this, who's going to do that. If there's need for evacuation, where you're going to go, how soon you're going to do that, and so on. Which vehicle is the most robust if you need to get out? So things like those. You have to have it's important that you have a plan. And even before that, it's also a good thing to look around your house and make sure that those things that need to be done in terms of having your property hurricane ready, okay, storm ready, that they're actually done. All right. That is really the foremost thing. All right. It's not too early to start looking around, but you should have done that already. And trimming some trees, for instance. Look at the roof, see if you think that it's capable, if there's some material that need to be replaced, and so you do those things. And of course, don't forget your insurance. That's important. All right, your house insurance is very, very important, because you really don't want to wait until the last minute, because just like everything else, once you get close, then the doors are closed. All right, and so you have to do those things. Okay, some of those should have been done already, but of course, if they're not, then now is a very good time to step up on those. You really want to be. We don't know what will happen over the next 60 hours. It's quite possible, as Mr. Josiah said, that we could see an intensification, rapid intensification. This has happened before. We recall Gonzalo when it was around the last time, and that developed just outside of Guadeloupe. And by the time it got to Antigua, everybody will agree that it was a hurricane, a Category 1 hurricane, just from Guadeloupe to Antigua. Very close, just outside Guadeloupe to Antigua.
Yes,
so
I remember
right,
that situation
so
very well.
Right, so these things happen, and this one has more time, it has more space, all right, and some conditions are conducive, and so it's quite possible that we definitely should keep our eye on this one and monitor it as closely as possible.
Yeah, I can remember that particular storm that turned into a hurricane, and then many persons were wondering how could the Met Office got it so wrong, but it wasn't really getting after the Met Office officers, the meteorologists explained what happened. It wasn't getting it wrong at all. It was just that things developed during the night after they had the forecast.
Yeah, rapid intensification. It happens. It happens. There's nothing that, as a matter of fact, not even the Hurricane Center can handle rapid intensification very well. It's something that it's not easy to manage. The science can't manage that too well.
So that's something that we cannot rule out of the equation this afternoon. And what happens generally, people want to hear these updates frequently, and they wait until the last minute to be running to the hardware store, and then there's absolutely nothing. Somebody else who saying, look, I'm going to take the risk, I'm going to err on the side of caution. They would have gone and purchased what they wanted, the T111, the farm ply, the wood up, and then, so are you saying that we should start now? It's not too early.
You should have, those things every year. You should have those things that you need to secure yourselves. Okay, some persons have their shutters, and that's a good thing. However, some kind of whatever you need to secure your property, you should have that in place. All right. We should also look at the food. That's an important thing. It is early in the year. We usually go on the media to inform persons that they should try to start collecting dry goods, like the corned beef, the spaghetti and things like those. Okay, and keep them just an extra one. Put it aside, extra one. This year, of course, the challenges have been greater. All right, you might not be able to get some of those things because of the COVID and so on and so forth. And so, again, that's another thing that you need to look at. These things, you should have them in place, because you really don't know. You don't want, when the time comes, to be left out, especially since we're also in the threat of within the threat of COVID and so on. So there's quite a lot that we have to contend with this year. And so don't make it hard on yourselves. Okay, just try to follow the very simple things that we spoke about from time to time. it will make your life, definitely make your life easier.
Okay, so here we are looking, what sort of rainfall, whether it becomes a storm, a hurricane, or just remains a disturbance, an area of disturbance, what sort of rain are we expecting? Because, you know, from time to time, people say nothing is going to pass, but they go out and it could be something like Lenny. Are we looking at something where you could go out and find yourself being trapped by water and not able to make it back? What are the concerns, even though we're looking at? Are we looking at significant rainfall?
I'll let Mr. Josiah handle that. Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
Yes, sure. Thank you. Okay. Well, it all depends on a number of things. How close will it get? The size and magnitude of the storm, the speed of the storm at which it's passing, whether or not we are in a particular quadrant and lend itself to greater cloud formation. All those will play a factor. The thing that we need to pay attention to, that at this stage, I would not necessarily want to be too specific. However, there is a need for us to pay attention to the nature of the types of hazards that something like this comes with. And I like the question that you asked in the context of how much rain can come out of a system like this. We can easily get rainfall totals that range between 3 and 6 inches. I do not want to say that we are looking at 4 inches or we're looking at 3. But you can appreciate that the dynamics of these storms can come with significant rainfall. While it is true that we will be thankful for the rainfall, however, residents of Antigua and Barbuda must be on their guard to the hazards that excess rainfall can bring, such as flooding, etc. So as we talk about the potential for rainfall, we would also want to talk about the preparedness that individuals who are more vulnerable to the type of rainfall in flood-prone areas must take on guard, and as but Mr. Meade said, plan effectively to mitigate against the vulnerability that you have. So if you are in a flood-prone area, now is the time for you to consider where you're likely to go. And if you know that you are weak in response, or you are vulnerable to these things, plan to make the move and plan to make sure that you have a place where you can go. But rainfall totals in excess of 3 to 6 inches, or between 3 to 6 inches, is fair game, although I do not want to be too specific at this time.
So, Mr. Meade, now, say to us as public servants, we have to pack away things. Should we be looking to anything like that to secure what from water, anything, or should we just wait it out?
Well, P.S., I hope that you have your plan in place as a senior a public servant and someone who is responsible for a ministry. Yeah, that is always a good thing. And really, the departments, again, they should have had their plans in place. But if they don't, now is a good time to start to look at how you're going to secure your working equipment. All right, how you're going to deal with your computers. So you're going to cover them up and you're going to store them. Is where you're going to store them? Is it a good place? Is it does it flood? Is it downstairs? Is it likely to flood? Should you move them to a higher place? So those are just some of the things that you need to look at as public servants. You should try as much as possible to secure the equipment, because you're going to need them after the activity is gone, whether it be a storm or whether it be a heavy rain event. You're going to need your equipment, and so you really should have a plan to secure them. And so that will be my advice, to have a plan in place to secure them and to start doing it now.
And Mr. Meade, let me lend some support to what you just said, because what PS basically asks is also in terms of the readiness to respond to it. And I love the fact, Mr. Meade, that you actually spoke towards the plan that they should have already have in place.
Yes.
Because what you do have from us in terms of weather practitioners, at this stage, Antigua and Barbuda is under an alert. That alert says, on your mark.
Yes.
On your mark means that you need to start to have those discussions about what is it that you need to respond to and the level of response that you need to have in preparation if the get set on your mark, get set, go is issued. Now, as I just mentioned earlier on, that this particular system is racing towards the west. And as it races towards the west and it encounters favorable atmospheric conditions, you can appreciate that things can happen and happen very fast. So as we just said, Antigua is under an alert. Don't be surprised that if tomorrow comes and that you said that, you know, something here, we have to issue a watch. Watch says, get ready. On your mark, get ready. And if by chance come Wednesday, there is a need for us to, by virtue of it becoming clearer, then we'll have to place Antigua and Barbuda and the rest of the Leeward Islands under a tropical storm watch or warning, as the case may be. The go should not catch you unawares. The go means that you are already prepared by virtue of your discussion, by virtue of you having your plans, by virtue of you enacting those plans, and you should be ready, prepared to get ready to enact those plans. So I love what Mr. Meade said, and I would really want to echo those sentiments. In every department and every place, homes, be it wherever, to have that plan, the alert has been given that says on your mark, get set, go can come at any time.
Yeah, that's correct. Very well said, Mr. Josiah.
Yes. So basically, from your standpoint, you're saying, get ready, get ready. It's better to be ready than to say at the end, I have it out, I can't go any place. But one of the challenges, I was hoping Mr. Michael, he would probably join us in a few minutes from what he indicated. But we could chat about the topic.
PS, one thing, sorry, PS, just one point before you move on, that that's a mindset that we've been trying to develop across Antigua and Barbuda, and of course the Leeward Islands, all right, where persons have this this get ready attitude and know when to respond and how to respond to the various bulletins that we set out. That's important, and of course we will continue to try to educate the public. We'll try to get the message, try to let them understand that every year we're going to go through this phase, and as such, persons need to understand and be able to act on these bulletins. These keywords, alert and watches and warnings, they're not just for so, but they're intended to invoke a certain kind of behavior. And so once we will continue until we get to that point that the public is fully au fait, as they say, and know what to do when these words are uttered.
That's so true, Mr. Meade. That's so true.
One of the major concern for some persons are that we are in the COVID pandemic season. And this is an unusual time to be in, because we have never experienced a storm when we have social distancing, sanitization, and etc. So how will we have to deal with things like our shelters? How do we educate our persons? And we're hoping to have somebody from NODS today or so, but we didn't get around, and that's why we needed Mr. Michael to give us some real good tips, because there are some persons who are not in a position to enjoy the luxury of their home throughout the storm. And so they have to find shelters. But how do we deal with this challenge? Any thoughts before Mr. Michael comes?
Yeah, that basically has added, okay, to the pressure. I know that is something that NODS is working on. They've set their protocols in place and so on and so forth. But it's a mini headache for them. Okay, it's true, because of course the other thing about it, even though you've set your plans in motion, your protocols, etc., we have never really dealt with this. Okay, so you really don't know in effect how it's going to pan out. All right, but the education that we have put in place up to this point in terms of persons, the social distancing, persons sanitizing themselves and so on, these will go a long way towards assisting the situation. All right, and so with the other protocols that are in place, once everybody understands what they are to do, because of course we're dealing here with other things as well. You might have the let's say the sick, okay, and so on and so forth, and persons need to physically move them from one point to the shelter and back. And so those persons who engage in that kind of work, again, they will have to be very, very careful with how they handle themselves, okay, and so on, so that they don't infect others, and so that they themselves do not become infected, okay. As we know, there's not a lot of public community testing that has been done. All right, and so the mantra is everybody has it until such time you can determine otherwise. And so yeah, those are some of the things that they'll have to do. It's a very daunting task. I really do not envy NADS at this point at all, because it's going to be very difficult for them to deal with. However, I know that it's something that they're tackling, and of course they expect to do very well at it when the time comes. If the time.
Don't want to be critical, but I think that you've posited some good points there, but don't want to be critical. But shouldn't that be information that we had coming into the season, knowing that we have been saying all along, the Met Office have been saying all along, this is going to be an active season. This is going to be an active season, and so those are plans. We should not be scrabbling now to educate persons what they need to do at this late hour.
That's true. And Met Office has also said one other thing that is very important. That is that it takes only one. Okay, so this is not an active season. One good storm that comes across can affect not only Antigua and Barbuda, but all the islands as well. Okay, and so the preparation should be just the same, okay, whether it's an active season or less than active season. All right, persons should really prepare themselves for a hurricane, regardless of what. You're in hurricane season, and so you prepare for a hurricane season. That's the message that I would want to put out, that persons should do. Just prepare for a hurricane season, and then you wouldn't need to worry about whether or not it's an active or not active. But it's true that we have said all along that this is likely to be a very active season. From all indication, that is likely to happen. It seems very much that way. And as such, persons really should have been on their guard from early. And some persons would have been doing so. I go around and see persons putting up the shutters and cleaning the trees and so on. So yeah, persons, they're getting it. Okay, the public is getting it. And of course, you have to constantly agitate, constantly remind them. That's all part of the process. And so we continue to do that.
It's very interesting. We've been trying to keep some count on these storms, Mr. Meade, and disturbance in the our area within the Atlantic and up in the Gulf of Mexico. And we're seeing one a week, and we may have exceeded now the one a week to an additional bonus one just in case something doesn't happen this week. So that should have set this. So that should have really set the stage for, you know, preparation. We got at least 7 good weeks to start saying out there, here's what you need to do. Here's what you need to do. If there's some things on your home that will not make it worthy, is there some way that we can lend some assistance to you? Because it would, to me personally, concerning the public health concerns, it would be better if your house is more suited to hold you even through a slight storm than to expose yourself to the challenges of COVID. Some of us have known not to be able to stand well to it. Let's say persons who have pre-existing condition, etc. That's going to be a bad environment for them to go, basically.
Yeah, that is true, PS. But yeah, human beings being what they are, okay, you know, you say, you talk. However, people will still, some people, not everybody, will still kind of wait and see. All right, and of course, there might be an economic aspect to it as well, PS. They just can't afford to do otherwise. And so that is to be expected, you know, that persons will, even though they know they are to get ready, right? I can tell you, I haven't really trimmed my trees, and I really know, even though I know I should have. Okay, I, you know, just got a bit lazy and didn't, you know, haven't quite done it. You know, so yeah, you know, we're like that. Human beings are like that. So even though I know better, you know, even though I've done some things, there's still a couple of things that I should have done. Okay, and so, you know, that is just human nature. Okay, so with the education, the continuing education, the continuing encouragement, and so on and so on and so forth. You know, with that, persons will it will encourage persons to actually act, and that is really what you want in the final analysis.
Oh, Mr. Meade, Mr. Pierce, let me jump inside here because there's a point that I really want to
Hey,
understand.
Mr. Josiah, I can say Mr. Joseph, you know, we're not on the job.
All right, Mr. Josiah. Oh, my bro. Okay, bro. Yeah, man. But you know, there is a part, and there is a part that Mr. Meade spoke about that that speaks about the behavior concept of response to storms that should not be taken lightly. Mr. Meade said it so plainly that the nature of what we do is because we want individuals' lives to be spared. And individuals have to want to take it seriously for their lives to be spared. Now, you asked a question concerning the COVID situation, and Mr. Meade answered it beautifully also. And he said, which I want to echo, that I would not necessarily want to be in a place for decision makers when you come to having to deal with COVID and storms. Here's the reason why it's so. Here's the reason why it is so critical where we are right now with respect to COVID, and we have been saying that there is a great chance for this year to be above normal. But what does above normal really means? I'm going to be sharing my screen so that we can so I can introduce a concept of readiness thing. This is a graph, and I think Mr. Meade will understand this graph. And this graph actually speaks to the peak and the lulls of the hurricane season. And you can see that right here on September 10th is when we enter the peak. We are currently right down here, right down at the base of between July 10th and the 1st of August. And already we are at the potentially 9th named storm. And we have not left July yet. What individuals need to take on board that we are at a stage right now where everything is just about to be ramped up from 1st of August right up to the 10th of September, coming down to the 20th of October. We are just about to enter a phase that we might not have witnessed in a long time. So when we talk about readiness to respond, you are looking at the possibility and the potential of responding to a storm today and responding to a storm every other week, potentially getting down in the month of August, and responding to not only storms, but strong storms as we get down into the heat of the season. So when we talk about the readiness and we're talking about the COVID situation and the people and the potential of people getting into shelters, you can understand and appreciate it's a very difficult period at which we are right now, and a very difficult period that we are likely to enter into for people to respond, and how you respond as we get down into the peak of the hurricane season.
Okay, there's one group of persons who I always worry about, and those are the mariners. Right? Somehow they tend to wait the latest to move their vessels to a safe shelter, and they're at the greatest risk. Okay, I know many times when the storm is approaching, that is when some captain or whatever will be calling the Met Office to ask, can I just get around? You think I'll make it around to Jolly Harbor? And he's somewhere in English Harbor, okay, or sometime on the other side. And that's scary. There's no question about it. That's scary. And so even though you might say, okay, fine, this is what we expect, we have a few hours, you still worry. And so I would want to appeal to those persons that they especially should have their plan in place and know where they're going to take their vessels to have to for safe shelter, and move in reasonable time. Don't wait until the last minute. Okay, you're putting not only your vessel at risk, but your very life is being put at risk. And so I want to appeal to them now that please, okay, know where you're going to put your vessel, know where you're going to store your vessel in the event that a system affects us, and please try to do so in as early a time as possible so that you can be safe and your vessel can be safe, especially you.
Okay, and so it was good that you showed us the draft that you had, Mr. Josiah, just a few minutes ago, because from my memory, I don't know if you could, your Mr. Meade could enlighten me. It's the first time I think that we probably may experience something like this in the recent past. So we generally like to say in this part of the islands, in Antigua, etc., you know, our time is usually September. I'm sure many of you have heard that, even though you, as professionals, recognize that this is not a wise saying.
Yeah, that is usually the peak. However, there's a build up to it. Okay, and what Mr. Josiah just showed, okay, is a graph kind in a way. Okay, you know, and how things over time, what usually happens. Okay, and so it is as you can see, it looks at number of storms per 100 year. Okay, and so it just takes them and present a graph of that. So it shows you definitely, and September 10th is quite reasonable, right? If we think about it, we recall Lewis, okay, on September 5th, I think it was, right? And some of the other storms, they come about that time. Okay, so that is really where our peak is really somewhere about there. Okay, but as you can see, all right, build up to that. Okay, we just don't wait, stick around and wait. There's quite a lot of activity that's possible between then and when we hit the peak, and even after the peak. Okay, George was around October, I think it was, all right, October. And so you can see that even then, right, we can have, you know, that kind of activity. Lenny was in November. And so, yeah, so that whole season is a time that when we really should be concerned and we really should prepare for it.
Okay, so it's the whole idea of getting ready and staying ready when it comes to the hurricane season. And as you were speaking to the mariner, is it a fact that is it a possibility that they do not pay much attention to the video, or we have to find another means of getting the information out to them? What do you think could be the reason why they chose so late to move the vessels?
Yeah, you're right, P.S. That is one of the problems. That is something that we have grappled with for a very long time. You recall Gonzalo and Mr. Andy, Sir Andy Roberts was one of our great critics at that time. And even though we did send out a bulletin at around midday and Sunday to say that this thing was happening, likely to develop, all right, most persons didn't hear it because it's a Sunday afternoon, they're having a quiet time. And according to Sir Andy, he went out to look his bait, all right? And so, yes, how do we get that? Okay, that's something that we have tried a lot over the years. This year, though, we have a little handle in it through nods, what they have as the CAP system. All right, we like to call it CAP system. And it's something that persons can download to the, we used it during the tsunami exercise and it worked quite well. And even this year, I noticed that so far they have put out an alert okay, that the Met Office sent out. All right, and it just popped up on my phone, gave me a sound, and I see it. And so that's one way PS, right? Everybody has a cell phone, and so they can download this CAP system onto the phone. All right, they can download it to the phone, and so you could, even if you are somewhere else, okay, once you have a cell phone and an alert is sent out, then you will see the alert, okay, and then it's just for you to act on it. That's the other important part, to act on it. All right, we have this tendency, you know, in Antigua, to stick around and wait until we're you know, really sure. I don't know what that, when you're really sure, but what you're doing is actually wasting time, okay? And for some people, it is critical, okay? And for the mariners, it's definitely critical, and they ought not to do that, all right? For everybody else too, they too should not be doing that. They should try to get that information and act on that information. So there are a couple of ways that the Met Office will, you know, we will, sorry, I always say we, sorry, Josiah.
You're still there, boy. You're still there, man. You're
it's
still
hard to
with
pull
us,
myself away just like that, yeah. But the
you're
Met
still with us.
but in spirit, certainly, okay? The Met Office still has many ways in which they can inform the public. There's a television, there's the website, and so on, okay? And the text messages. So there are lots of ways that information goes out, all right? And so with the NODS CAP added to that, the information will definitely go out, and persons just need to act on it. And also they have a responsibility to monitor, okay, to stay with it, to monitor closely. Okay, they also have that responsibility. That's a personal responsibility.
Yes.
Brother Joe, let me tell you something. I so love what Mr. Meade is saying. Mr. Meade sounds that he's still with us. I love this, man. I love this. I really love
spirit
this.
for sure, Josiah.
Mr. Meade, man. The experience is showing, man. The experience is showing. Now, one of the things about hurricane preparedness that we cannot underscore, and Mr. Meade is talking to it, it's the use or the misplaced word of complacency. People, look, we have a culture. Look, let me tell you, I just went out here during the course of the day, and you'll be surprised to know how many people said to me, oh, just a storm, man, Antigua can take that. Why we easy with this? You know, we can do this. Man, we can take up to a cat 2. But when it starts to get cat 3 and cat 4, we start to listen. Now, that's a type of complacency that we have to speak about, because many individuals are looking at storms from the vantage point of just the wind, but there are many more hazards to the storms that we have to pay attention to. Flooding is a very serious part of it, and those individuals who live close to the coastline, there's a storm surge. Mariners need to pay attention to this, and complacency is a word that we have to keep hitting at people on with respect to their readiness, with respect to their preparation for the hurricane season. That complacency must be rooted out at all costs.
Oh, one other point, Joe, along the same line. Earlier, we started by saying that rapid intensification is not something that the science has a good handle on. We saw, for instance, in Gonzalo, just from Guadeloupe to here. Okay, so what was a tropical disturbance then? And Guadeloupe, by the time it traveled 35 miles, it was already a category 1. It could have been a category 2. It could have been a category 3. You understand? So the rapid intensification does, even though we believe it will be a category 1, all right? You could have rapid intensification that cause it to be whatever category. And so for you to say, you know, complacently disregard it, it's a category 1. We can take that. Is it as bad as Lewis? All right, I don't need no problem. Right. So what you're doing there is you're setting up yourself in a situation where it is quite possible that you're going to be caught, okay, and you're going to be affected badly, or because you're not preparing for the worst. And so if you're going to prepare for the worst. That is my.
That's right.
Okay, guys, I just wait. Looking there because I was expecting Mr. Michael in, but I don't know. He's still there. He was in the YouTube page I see following, but he probably joined us and we're looking to wrap up. Anything that we can say to the people about what's expected in the next 60 years?
Well, in the context of what we have been talking about, the nation is now placed on an alert out of an expectation for inclement weather, and might I add, serious weather too. There is a bit of uncertainty, but we're not necessarily foolish about what is likely to happen. The uncertainty that will, with respect to AL92, is one in which that we can see tropical cyclone form, but at the same time, the degree of by virtue of the atmospheric conditions can lend it something greater than what was expected if the rapid intensification does occur. So as it stands right now, there is not a tropical storm, there is not a tropical cyclone out there. There is an area of disturbed weather, but the anticipation is from the National Hurricane Center that we will see formation taking place out of this area where a tropical cyclone will not only form, but is likely to threaten the Eastern Caribbean, Antigua and Barbuda included. And the degree of preparedness will certainly get us through this. What we can say is that as we go through the next 48 or the next 24 hours, much will depend on what type of development it undergoes. As it stands right now, the area of disturbed weather lacks a definite inner core, lacks the collective activity to spin itself up. But all that can happen because it's now moving into an area where we could see higher heat content, warmer sea surface temperatures, lighter wind shear. The only thing that is working against it is its forward speed. The models are suggesting that that will decrease. Some of the more reliable models takes it through Dominica. One, that's the ECMWF, which is the European model, takes it down that area, which will place Antigua and Barbuda and the rest of the Leeward Islands into that that dreaded northern quadrant where the weather is worse. If it does follow the track that the GFS is suggesting, which is north of Barbuda, it places Antigua and Barbuda and the rest of the Leeward Islands into a better scenario than if we were in the northern quadrant. So what I'm saying is that we should be preparing, listening, and monitoring the situation as we say that these things can happen fast within the next 60 hours. And as what Mr. Meade said, that the history showed for a couple of years ago, where Gonzalo wrapped itself up so swiftly within 24 hours, we can be seeing this particular situation, and the residents of Antigua and Barbuda ought to be prepared.
Okay, so here we have Mr. Michael joining us, and those big questions. But Mr. Meade, before he joins us on the set there, there's one question. Someone was saying on the YouTube page, in case you can't go to a shelter, how can you secure prepare a place? I know you're not in the construction field, but with your experience, you probably have a few thoughts that you can share.
Well, you're right. Why don't we have a convinced Ministry of Health that we need space? That makes sense. Right. Hello?
Mr. Michael, you're right there. We're hearing you.
Okay, yeah, okay. Mr. Michael, sorry, let me just to deal with a question that the PS put forward, Mr. Joseph, as he wants to be called.
Yeah, Mr. Joseph, not PS business, Joseph.
You're my PS, man, and I say it with great honor. Right, so yeah, so we spoke about trying to ensure that your house is secure, okay? In the event that you cannot get to a shelter, well, it's good to look at your property, right, and try to ensure that at least some part of it is very secure. For instance, you may have let's say a house that has a wall portion, okay, a wall portion. Sometimes it will be like that. There's board and then there's a there's a wall portion, right? something like that, you know, you could look at that and see how to ensure that that is very secure. So in event if anything happens, that is where persons will go to ride out the storm. All right. The other thing is you could you have neighbors. You could have a neighbor, and you could you know, liaise with the neighbor, speak to the neighbor, and say, look, I'm not too sure about this. In the event that I need to take a quick one, I would like to ask if you would be willing to take me in. The neighbor might say, okay, fine. And so you could do that. So that would not take you very far away. The only thing with that, though, is that if you're going to do that, I would suggest that you do that as quickly as possible. Don't wait until the worst has come, okay? Because then that makes it very, very, very difficult, okay? But however, in all other areas, if you know that your property cannot take it, then you should seriously look at a shelter and try to get there in reasonable time.
Okay, Mr. Michael, the big question that we had this afternoon for you is, so how do we go to shelters? What's the level of preparation for shelters? I know that you're not here now, you don't work as a chief health inspector anymore, but people are concerned about having to go to a shelter in the COVID pandemic period. How would that work? And would it be safe based on your professional perspective?
Yeah, well, I'm giving you my professional experience and expertise in this regard, because the whole, and especially in the situation with COVID, I think the major issue with the COVID and the shelters is one of social distancing, because we have been carrying and preparing ourselves with the other measures that we are now practicing for COVID. They were there before. So when we're going to shelters, we have water, we have hand hygiene supplies, and we have blanket, we have different types of equipment we take to a shelter. And so the only thing we have to worry about in the shelter is the social distancing. And how do we accomplish the social distancing public health measure, which is so vital for the prevention and control of COVID-19. But when you look, I think the first thing we need to do, and I think they have done it in Antigua, is to assess all the shelters. Assess all the shelters and determine which determine the suitability of these shelters and where people can go and how many people can go in a particular shelter, and that should be published and indicate, and the shelter manager should know that they can accommodate 40 persons, bearing in mind that they're practicing social distancing 6 feet apart in the shelters. And so families stay together and so on. Groups of people who are accustomed to each other stay together and so forth. So I think the major challenge for the shelters is, number one, to go out and assess them. Number two, to make sure that the capacity of the shelter is such that it can facilitate social distancing and allow everybody to be comfortable in the shelter and at the same time prevent COVID-19. So that would be my first response. The second response would be, and I was listening to the various speakers there talk about the preparation and a busy season. I think, my humble opinion, I think that once the 1st of June is arrive upon us, we should start preparing and get ready for any eventuality during the whole season. So I hear terms like busy season, not so busy season, and so on. Yes, while I may not have several storms one after the other and so forth, once it's a hurricane season, we have to start preparing ourselves and take the necessary measures. And I heard a lot of my observation is in Antigua and where I am now, that we tend to focus a lot on the outside of our houses, look out the windows and doors and so on, and clean up around the home, get rid of objects that can become spears and can become flying and damage the property and so forth. So I think inside of the house is also important. How do you secure documents, important documents? How do you protect your library if you do have your library, a book area? How do you protect your furniture indoors? Do you have insurance for the contents of your home? Do you have that? Or if not, how do you protect them? Do you have tarpaulin inside in case something go wrong with your roof? I know in the BVI here, the last Hurricane Irma and in Barbuda, blew out windows, blew out doors and windows, blew them out. And the roof, a lot of roofs were still intact, but the windows were lifted out of their place. And so I think that we have to pay attention to indoors, how we're going to protect documents, how we're going to protect furniture, how we're going to protect our clothing, our shoes, and so on. And so we have to make sure we have the necessary garbage bags that can pack things in and label them and put them at the place just in case you have water coming into your home, in case you have your roof damaged, if you have your windows damaged, and so on. So I think those are the points that we want to make at this time. With regard to the general national preparedness, I think, again, as I said, with the vulnerability analysis of various structures, government offices, private offices should be assessed. Look at the vulnerable aspect of it, and see how you can manage it, how you can plug it. Look at the community, bulk waste removal from villages, from communities, from your home, and secure them at the site and take them at the site for disposal. And so the national preparedness focuses on the shelters, focus on assessment of government buildings, focus on assessment of private sector, and people should keep some money available close by in case that they have a storm and they can't go to the bank and they have to buy food, they have to buy essential items and so on. So you need to keep some money on your person in your house so you can be able to respond. And after the storm, you can be able to purchase supplies and medication and so forth. Those are the kind of things I want to mention.
Okay, so Mr. Michael, we have spent up to an hour this evening. I know you were unable to join because of this the change in the time. But one of the things we're going to close with this evening, just before you go, is that we have a lot of low-lying areas. We have many low-lying areas in Antigua, West Palm Beach, flooded.
Cashew Hill.
Absolutely. What can we, as citizens, community people, do to alleviate some of the challenge that we may have in some of these communities? If the national effort did not take place of the aids and so forth, what advice you can give to people to minimize?
My advice would be Cashew Hill, West Palm Beach, Grace Farm, Perry Bay, Fort Road, that big drain past the Fort Road. I think the planning needed to take place. They needed the type of planning way before June 1st to ensure that they can mitigate some of the impacts, remedy some of those problems that exist in those communities in terms of housing, in terms of drainage in particular, clean them out, the water can flow, move all the debris and so on. So, and also, again, that's why I come in with the vulnerability analysis and the weather Department of Meteorological Affairs would give advice to government agencies like Public Works, Environment and Health, Agriculture to a certain extent, to give early advice to people to evacuate if you live in low areas, and as I indicated, ensure that they can go to a shelter, and shelter managers are to ensure that they have the requisite amount of persons in them, so that social distancing can be observed and practiced. Again, the hand hygiene things are always in shelters, and they are reinforced with COVID-19. So my only concern is to ensure that is to practice the social distancing in the shelters. If churches are accustomed to hold 60 people, they may be able to hold 35 or 40 now, because you got to go 6 feet apart. And people should have their PPE and so on, and walk with their PPE, their mask to the shelters, and walk with the hand sanitizer. Again, as I said, hand hygiene things are at the shelters. But for the low-lying areas, I think a massive planning needs to take place before the hurricane season. Okay, if we weren't able to do that, then we can give early warning to people in these areas about evacuation. Don't wait until the appointed time, because we know we're going to have 5 inches of rain, we're going to have 4 inches of rain, and people should evacuate if they know if the authorities have determined that the area is vulnerable and to flooding and to serious flooding, and which may cause catastrophe. And therefore, I would recommend the early warning system based on meteorological advice coming out of Antigua and Barbuda. Even down here in the BVI, we have inspected all the shelters. We have they're developing social distancing procedures to deal with the shelters and how many people can be in a shelter and so on as a response to the storm and COVID-19.
I was just about to ask you that question, so you preempted me to ask Mr. Josiah. Will should that be turned into this development, turn into a storm? Will BVI be anywhere in the way? Then I was going to ask Mr. Michael, has he started his preparation? Well, he's always preparing as a matter of fact, because he starts a long time keeping a keen eye on the drains to make sure they're not overgrown. So I am sure that he's doing the same thing where he is. You know?
Well, the Department of Disaster Management down here is sending out a lot of information to various departments and individuals on their website, and take a lot of information from Antigua Meteorological Service, and so that is well monitored. We're monitoring the storms and monitoring any impact that any storm development and so on. But even though we don't have a hurricane and we have plenty of rain, because it does as bad, particularly for the low-lying areas though. And I think that the meteorological office would be in a position to give some advice to people in low-lying areas to evacuate and not to evacuate. Because we can have, if we have, I don't know, 4 inches of rain, 5 inches of rain in certain areas, we know we're gonna see what's flooding, where people are going to go. We don't want people to be moving out at the last moment. And so I think early warning and early evacuation measures should be a priority.
Absolutely, absolutely. I hear you. So we want to keep the people well informed. I know well into the evening, persons will log in and to check to see what we had to say about the weather. And I'm sure this evening they'll be feeling pleased to hear that they've heard from some people who have walked the walk. Mr. Michael, we didn't hear about until 79 David and Dominica, but it never really impacted us. Just breeze passing, blow a few canes down. But in 89, we felt something from Hugo, and thereafter you had to deal with all that. George's, Lenny,
yes.
Louis, so the experiences there. And
Louis was the worst hurricane we have. Yes, Louis was bad for us. Yes. We had a lot of.
And so.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. Yes.
No, I think one of the impacts we have to look at after the storm is how we deal with refrigeration of food. Whether we have a hurricane or we have plenty of water on the ground and we have to take off electricity for a period of time, people have to start to prepare when the storm is going to hit, when we're going to have a lot of rain. If you're going to come on Thursday, people have to start to make a lot of ice in their freezers now. Today's Monday, make a lot of ice and put it up. So when the current off, the ice can help keep the temperature of the fridge at a certain, safe, so that your food in the fridge can become safe and you would not have to spoil, the food would not be spoiled or deteriorated. So refrigeration of food after the storm is a major issue. And my advice to people, once we hit the hurricane season, people should not be shopping and buying a lot of perishable foods in bulk. They have to be shopping weekly because if you have a storm and you have electricity out for inordinate period of time, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever, and you don't have a generator, then you're going to have issues with keeping food safe and all your food may spoil. And so I want to introduce the concept of smart shopping in this hurricane season, so people can buy the right amount of food that will last them for maybe a week. I talk about perishable foods. Dry food should be bought and put up. Canned foods, biscuits and the dry goods and so on can be bought. But in terms of the perishable food, the chicken, the meat, the different types of food that require refrigeration, they have to be careful on the amount that they would buy in this hurricane season. Because whether you have a hurricane or not, and you have a lot of water, you have a lot of wind, you can have electricity go out and it can affect the refrigeration of food, and hence it may lead to food poisoning if people are not careful. Also, people have to look about the water right after the storm. You want to make sure you pay attention to water. If water gets in your cistern and fill it up, that is good. You use the water, you have to add chlorine to it. The CBHI now have guidelines on how to treat water, how to make the water safe for you to use, not only for drinking, but for all other personal uses, because You don't want to get skin diseases from using cistern water. So you have to make the water safe for any personal and other domestic uses. So those 2 points with regard to the immediate impacts after flood, after heavy rain, after heavy winds and so on, that may damage electricity, and heavy rain bring a lot of water. I mean, 3 weeks down the line, 2 weeks down the line, 10 days after, they bring it to have the mosquitoes set in and so on, and you know, they will carry with fogging and so forth. But for your immediate home, you need to pay attention to the refrigeration system and the freezer system. Make sure you make ice now, put ice in your freezer and make it now so that you can have ice to help you prepare for the said stuff. There's a lot I said a mouthful, but that's what I put in.
Okay, Mr. Michael.
Yeah, you said a lot, yes.
Yeah, Mr. Michael, just to let you know that the Met Office has the alert that was issued considered the community of the British Virgin Islands also.
Yes, I saw that. I saw that.
The matter continues to be even a little bit more serious for the British Virgin Islands, and here's the reason why. Some of the models are showing that when it passes Antigua, or if the bad weather passes Antigua, it could find itself in a zone where you have some development taking place over the British Virgin Islands. And that is considerable to know, because if I was supposed to share my screen, I'm giving you just a snapshot as to the GFS model, and you could see the center, and you could see the center of the cyclone likely to be, and this is the British Virgin Islands up here. And you can see that the broad circle and the broad expanse of this particular wind field does encompass, albeit that you're seeing a lot of the winds out towards the north. I would not necessarily want to hold on to this, given the fact that consolidation will bring the winds closer to the center. And as such, the British Virgin Islands could be in, if it follows along this particular track, which is the latest GFS model, which continues to bring the system through the Eastern Caribbean and also over the British Virgin Islands. Now, the good news about this, though, is that the ECMWF does place the system in the center a little bit further towards the south and a little bit more towards the west, racing it through a little bit more. But albeit, you should be preparing for the likelihood of some bad weather coming in, and for the likelihood of what we call development situations taking place with respect to the passage of this area of disturbed weather.
Is the time frame you're looking at Thursday, Friday, weekend?
Yeah, you're looking at more Thursday afternoon. Thursday morning going on to Thursday afternoon gives some. If the ECMWF holds true, then it can come in a little bit more faster. But we are looking at someplace, if we can call it an ensemble, mean someplace in the region of late Saturday night getting on into Thursday morning for you guys, that's fair game. But give and take a little bit of time, because these things can slow up, they can speed up, it's dynamic, and it's such a large system, by the way. So some consideration should be given to that, but albeit, let's get prepared for you guys down in the British Virgin Islands for the passage of the possibility of a tropical cyclone, which is more likely would be a tropical storm.
Yeah, very good. Thank you for that information. Very important.
I just want to say that so that Mr. Michael, to Mr. Michael, that BVI has been one of the islands that collaborate very closely with us in terms of the forecast that we give, giving us feedback on what they're experiencing so that we can provide updates and so on. And so I really want to commend them, and for you to let them know that we really value that type of collaboration. Well, the Met Office value that type of collaboration. Let them know, and so that it can continue. All right, yes, because I think that we are at a very good place working with BVI.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so gentlemen, I want to thank you for giving up the time from your family and from your other activities today. I'll touch base with you again tomorrow. There's some other things we want to say to the people, but as it gets closer, we'll have more definitive information getting into the storm itself, and maybe more crucial points would have to be given to the general public. Brother Josiah, it's not only the church family that we're speaking to today, we're speaking to other people outside of our circles. We're here to serve the community. And God bless you, Brother Michael. You know, they say never miss the water till the well go and dry, but we're happy to have you in. You're close by. You know?
Yeah, no problem.
Yes, yes. Yeah. And Mr. Meade, yes.
We're having plenty of rain as I speak to you right now. A lot of rain is coming here right now.
Wow, wow. That's good. That's good. Yes. So, gentlemen, have a pleasant evening and thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing with the people. God bless you all and have a great evening.
All right, you're welcome.
Great stuff. Thank you so much, man. Okay.
Thank you very much, PS, and call on me anytime. Not a problem. All right.
All right,
that's quite okay. Have a good evening.
Okay, then, take care.